Okay, hello everyone. This is Zarina El-Amin Naeem here in Detroit, Michigan in the winter time. So it's cold, but this is also perfect writing weather, right? This is the type of weather that is great to just snuggle up with your computer and a blanket and get your book done. So I see some people who are joining the webinar. I'm going to wait a few moments. So go ahead and check in with your name, location, and whether or not you're working on a fiction or nonfiction title. So go ahead and check in with your name, your location, and whether you are working on a fiction or nonfiction title. I'm going to formally start in just a few moments, but I wanted to just make sure everything here is working on the system. So if you can hear me, go ahead and sign in with your name, your location, and let me know whether you're working on a fiction or a nonfiction title. So on the right of the screen, you should see a chat box. You should be able to type in there and I will get your message. And you can also throughout the webinar type in any questions that you have. And I am going to make sure that we answer all of your questions. So even if it's on finishing your book draft, or if it's on your topic, your target audience, whatever it happens to be, whatever questions you may have, go ahead and type those in, and then I will be able to see you there. All right, so Erica from New York and is working on a fiction novel. Okay, wonderful, welcome. Shahida Ahmed, Assalamu alaikum, and her son Amir. And Shahida is working on a nonfiction workbook and Amir is working on a fiction book. Wonderful. So you guys as well, like while you're checking in, if you can give a little more information on your book too. So if you already know what your book is about, like the specific title, go ahead and type that in. So Shahida, for you, like what is your nonfiction workbook? What's the subject on? Erica as well. So if you can type in like what your subject is about. Amir as well, your fiction novel, if you already have some ideas on the big idea for that, go ahead and type those in as well so that we can see. All right, so right now what we're doing for those who are joining us, we're just checking in. So go ahead and sign in with your name, your location. And if you already have your book in mind, is it a fiction book? Is it a nonfiction? And if you already know the subject, go ahead and type that in as well so that I can see exactly what you're working on for here. So I'm going to be sharing with you all some different tips on how to finish your draft quickly. We're going to start in a few moments. We'll give a few more people time to settle in. But I also wanted to talk to you all about something I'm going to be kicking off in the next couple of weeks. I keep pushing it back because my clients are taking a lot of my time, but I am going to do another group program. So for those of you who are interested in joining a group publishing program of other authors who are working on getting their books done within the next 6 months to a year, the next group publishing class is going to start in a couple of weeks, so probably at the beginning of January. So you all can register for that now, kind of solidify your place in there now so you can get ready. So everyone who is joining now, we're already joining the program. We're already sort of giving them things to start working on so that they're not behind. So every step of the way, you're going to be guided with that. So, all right. So I see some other people who are still typing in. Wonderful. Great to see you guys. So type in your location too, like where are you joining us from, and whether your book is fiction or nonfiction. Okay, so Shahida said the nonfiction book, no title yet, but the main topic is on math education with family in mind. Okay, wonderful. Math education with family in mind. Okay, all right. So give me 1 minute, you guys, and we're going to start in just 1 moment or so. I want to make sure everything is working. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm Zarina El-Amin Naeem again, and what I always take my authors through, and I'll give you all a preview as well, is of different 5 phases so that you can finish this book and get it done. So you need to be congratulated, first of all, on even taking steps to finish your book. Because as I say all the time, studies show that over 80% of the population, American population, wants to write a book, but of course 80% do not. So you need to be congratulated on taking the steps to even get your book done and step out, be one of the cream of the crop that actually get it done. So the phases that are included in writing a book are doing the inner work. We're going to talk a little bit about that as it relates to finishing your draft today. The building a solid publishing plan, of course, writing your draft, which is our focus today. Building a book dream team, people who can help you get this book done with quality. And then, of course, how are you going to sell and make money from your book if that's important to you? So the phase 5 is marketing and spinoffs. So our publishing system, the self-publishing system, is really built for those who want to get it out within the next 6 months to a year. So if that's you, then you'll really see why I have some time limits on things. And that's because we don't like to have it just linger. If you want to get this book done, set it in your mind that you're going to get it done, and you're going to get it done quickly. This is not a project that's like 5 years from now. There's no reason for it to be 5 years from now for most of you, for most of the ideas that you have. So we're talking about getting acclimated to the system and moving very quickly. So getting your books done within the next 6 months to a year or so. So I'm Zarina El-Amin Naeem. For those of you who don't know me, my publishing road really started with this book here on the screen, Jihad of the Soul, Singlehood and the Search for Love in Muslim America. So this book was a book that was based on my master's thesis. I was doing my master's thesis in anthropology, and I finished my thesis and, patting myself on the back. It was a really good work. So a lot of people wanted to know what were the results that I got. So in this case, I decided that self-publishing was the perfect route for me to be able to get this book out to the public and for people to be able to get my message. Because I was sitting at my screen, like typing replies to all the emails that I got. Like, what did you find about singlehood? Why are there so many single people? And all these questions that I would get. And I was continuously typing the response. And that took a lot of time. So publishing the book was one of the easiest ways for me to get that book done. So this book, of course, writing the draft was a little bit different because it was for a master's thesis. However, when it comes to other books that I've done, I followed the system that I'm going to share with you all today. But that's the book that really set me out on the publishing road several years ago. So then I went on to publish calendars. And of course, these types of projects are a little bit different than a full-scale manuscript or book, but they still require you to organize your thoughts, to pull the ideas together, and to have it in a cohesive manner. So we published this Arabic calligraphy calendar, The Street Art of LC. And then we went to our beautifully wrapped calendars, which some of you all may know. So these calendars are calendars that we put out to counteract some of the imagery, the negative imagery that we see in the world. So like you, for your book, maybe you're writing your book because you have a particular message that you want to share with the world, or you want to put out certain images, or you want people to learn about this subject, or whatever the reason may be. Putting your book out is going to help you be able to achieve that goal and have it on a larger scale than just you alone. So that's the reason, one of the reasons for publishing, right? So this is the last book that I just published towards the summer of last year. So it was like glue, the little book of marriage advice we should have stuck to from the beginning. So my husband and I co-wrote this book, and it's filled with marriage tips that we've been sharing with other folks to help them repair their marriages as well. So you can see my publishing experience is a little bit different than other folks. I kind of do a mixed media. So whatever I feel is best for me with that particular topic, That's the medium that I use. So books, calendars, sometimes events and such as well. All right. So my father was the first client that I had who came to me after some reluctivity. He was a little reluctant about coming at first because I'm the daughter, of course. But so he had this book that was a compilation of all of his musings that he had written for a newspaper. So he had written all these articles, and he didn't know how to really compile these things together. So I'll show you all a little bit later. Sometimes when you're writing your book, you may have writings that you can already pull from, and you can compile those things, and that can be the basis of your book, which can save you a lot of time. You don't necessarily have to start from scratch. So he was not starting from scratch. He had a compilation of writings that needed some editing, of course, and needed some organization, but he did not have to start from scratch. So in today's webinar, I'm going to show you how you both can start from scratch if you don't have any writings, nothing to pull from at all, and as well as how you can pull from what you already have to create your first book. So this is just the first calendar that we put together as well. All right, so finishing your draft. The number one thing, and I know this is different than what a lot of people who focus on books talk about, but honestly, it's very true. If you don't get your inner work together and you don't get your thinking and your mindset on publishing this book, it's not going to work. You can have all the tools, you can have all the tips, all the techniques in the world, but if your mind is not together, and if you have not really focused on doing the inner work that you need to do, all of those techniques would do you no good. It'll just be a waste. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can build your author mindset. The first thing for writing your draft that you need to know is that your first draft is going to suck. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be crap. And that's normal. So don't really get hung up on that. Now, you're going to do the discipline. You're going to do what you need to do in order to get your book done. But that first draft is going to be whack. But the thing is that your finished book goes through phases. You start out with this first draft that's really rough and that really is not coherent. You know, you start out there, and through the editing process, through the chiseling away of these little bites or adding here or taking away there, that is when the beauty and that is when your full draft really comes out. The full book really comes out. So at this juncture, just realize that your first draft is going to be terrible, and just understand that and know that. So don't beat yourself up about it at all. Okay. Now, the other things that you need to get in your mind as an author are that you deserve to write this book. You do not have to have a PhD in whatever subject it is that you're writing. Your life experiences and the fact that this message is on your heart is enough. So you deserve to write this book. Get that in your mind. You are smart enough to write this book. Again, you don't have to be a doctorate. You don't have to hold a doctorate in a particular area for you to be able to have credentials. So you're smart enough to write the book. Now, you have access to all that you need as well. Some people tell me, oh, I don't really know a lot on my subject. The process of writing the book is a learning process. It is an education tool in and of itself. So that means that there may be some research that you need to do. You may have to go and interview some people and talk to other folks. But the fact is, you have access to all that you need in order to get this book done. So don't approach it from a standpoint of being deficient. Approach it from the standpoint that this universe is abundant, and everything that you need in order to produce a dynamic book that people will want to read and learn from is available to you. So any hurdle that comes, any bit that you are not sure about, you don't know about, you can get that information. All right. So these are some of the things that I need you all to have in your mindset as we start this process, and as you start the process of writing your first draft, right? So again, it's going to be terrible. Don't worry about that. Now, this is a slide I always show because I need for you all to really build up your inner self, and that is claim that you are writing this book and that you're going to get it done. Again, 80% of the American population alone. And I know the last webinar had people from Pakistan, there were people from England, so it was a worldwide phenomenon. But this is the statistic that I know in America, is that it's 80% of the American population who say they want to write a book. They have something they think is useful to the world, but they don't all do it. So for you all who are here on this webinar, you're here for a reason. So claim it for yourself. You are writing this book and you are the author of the forthcoming book, such and such and such and such. Introduce yourself that way to other folks. Let people know what you're doing, because everything that you can do to build up your inner belief system, I guess, you know, that, hey, I'm doing this, I'm getting it done, will help you to achieve the goal of writing this book. So claim it for yourself, all right? Now, number one, in writing your draft, finishing your draft. Remember when you were in high school or in college and you had to write your research paper and you had to set the theme, right? So you had to know what it is you're writing about. What is the subject that you're writing about? Now, for those of you who are writing fiction books and those of you who are writing nonfiction books, there are some differences in techniques, and I will try to point those out as I go along. However, in and of itself, whenever you're starting to write a book, you need to know, what is the goal of your book? What do you want to achieve from the writing of this book? And then what is the big idea? What's the main idea? What's the takeaway message? So when someone puts your book down, what do you want them to walk away with? You know, what are the feelings? What are the emotions? What is the information that you want them to get? What is the reason for them to read this book? Because people can read anything, right? And so if someone is spending the time, excuse me, to read your book, you need to at least know in and of itself, for you, you know, what's the goal? Why are you writing it? So now set the theme, set the tone, set the theme for your particular book. All right, so who are you writing for? And I gave this example in the last webinar for those of you who caught that. But it's a lot easier to write for a group that you know. So if you can imagine that you're writing a book for people similar to your Aunt Caroline, that's my aunt. So let's say you're writing a book and it's for people who are similar to your Aunt Caroline, who maybe are, you know, educated, who are retired, who are middle class. You know, if you can get yourself in the mindset of your targeted audience, that's going to help you in writing the book draft. So these are all things that you're doing before you even sit down to write the actual draft. Having your mind, who are you writing for? So let me walk you all through this example that I give sometimes for this book, How to Make Money in Your Spare Time. So a lot of times people will say, my book is for everyone. It's for everyone in the world. Everyone wants to read it. But that can't be true, for a number of reasons. One is that the language that you use in your book may not be interesting or attractive for every single person in the world, right? The examples that you use, even the subject itself may not be appropriate or attractive for everyone. So when you're clear on who you're writing for, it will help you to use the correct language and to use the type of examples and to use maybe the plot ideas or the type of characters for your fiction novels. It will help you to get in the mindset of your targeted reader. So let's say you're writing a book on how to make money in your spare time. And you say the book is for people who want to make money. And then I challenge you to go deeper and you say it's for women, which is great, but you need to go a little bit deeper. So then you say it's for mothers, which is wonderful. But again, you need to go deeper than that, because there are a lot of mothers in the world. There's millions of them. So go deeper than that. So you say stay-at-home mothers, which is awesome because that's narrowing it down some, but it's still a pretty broad number. So then you say, okay, so I'm writing this book for stay-at-home mothers with elementary age children. So let's say you have that in your mindset, and now you're sitting down to write your draft. with that very targeted audience in mind, you can see how the examples that you use, or even the language or the tone of the book, can be geared towards that particular group of folks. So when you're targeting your audience and when you provide a clear niche for your book, you're able to really hone in on the audience and they will get it a lot easier. So the point right there again is to have a niche for your book. All right. Now, the thing with writing your book is that, like any building, everything starts with one brick at a time. So you're not going to have your full finished book in a day, right? So that means you have to start somewhere. So you just start. You start, and then it will trickle, and then it will build up, and then before you know it, you'll have your final book draft. All right. So now a secret tip as far as jumping into the writing of your draft. And remember, I said that the first draft is probably going to be not so great. But the secret tip right now is to not worry about the words. You don't want to wordsmith the writing of your first draft. You want to get it out of your head and down onto paper. That's it. The editing will fine-tune the draft. So right now, don't worry about whether this word sounds better than this, or whether you put an A when you should have had an and here. Don't worry about any of those things. Just get it out. Okay. Now, before you write, remember I talked to you earlier about my father who put his book together, The Spiritual Adam. When we worked on that book, we decided that it was best to use his first book should be a compilation of all of his writings that he had already done. So if you are writing your book, maybe you can write the same similar type of book. Maybe you have a blog or something that you're already doing. Maybe you have, maybe you're a teacher, you have lesson plans. Maybe you have some handbooks that you've put together. So what I want you to do is take an inventory of what you already have at your disposal and then organize that. So for example, like I mentioned, the money book. So perhaps this is a financial person that's writing this book on money, and they already write emails to their clients with tips or such. Maybe they write messages. Maybe they've posted on some blogs, or they've been a guest writer, or they've written some old articles or such. So before you write on whatever your topic is, you can pull all of the things that you already have at your disposal into one place. So don't neglect everything that you already have. And so especially if this is something that's, something that you have been working on for a while, don't ignore the fact that you may have some things that you can already use. So take inventory of that, because that's going to give you a really strong jumping off point. Now, how do you get organized for your book? There are several ways that you can use, of course. If you interview 10 writers, I'm sure you'll get 10 different ways on how to finish your draft. But I'm going to share with you all a couple of things that I use and that other people that I know use, and it works really well for them. So number one is the binder method. So I mentioned pulling all of those old writings, maybe articles, things that you have done. So those things you can compile and put into just a basic 3-ring binder. This really helps you to organize everything that you have for your book, puts it all into one place. Other things that you can add here are articles that you find interesting, maybe an image that you want to provide for your reader, maybe a website that you found that has some really good information that you want to pull from. Whatever it is that is useful for your book, you're going to compile that and put it into this book binder. I like to, once I finish my first draft, I like to print that out and also put it into my book binder, because it allows me to really see things. I'm a touchy-feely type person. I like to see it on the paper. I like to be able to move it, back and forth. And sometimes I can do those things a lot easier on paper rather than just relying on a folder on my computer. So this works for me, this binder method, compiling everything in our book, Like Glue, the little book of marriage advice that we should have stuck to from the beginning. That book was created from this binder method. what I did was I had a list of tips, marriage tips that I wrote. Some I wrote, some my husband wrote, some we had gotten from our wedding, because at our wedding we had everybody write down a tip for us, um, and a marriage tip, something that we could follow, you know. So, of course, we didn't follow them for a really long time, which is one of the reasons that we kind of got into some sticky places, which hence the book says the little book of marriage advice we should have stuck to from the beginning. But okay, anyway, that's an aside. But the point is that I printed out all of these different tips and I put them in a book binder so that I could like move them back and forth and organize it very, very easily. And then I used to go around, and whenever I would come across a website that I liked, I would just print out that page and I would stick it in the binder as well. Because for me, I need some place that's going to hold everything very clearly, very easily. And I don't always like to kind of click on lots of different files on my computer, like going back to, oh, what was this one? Clicking that, open it. What was this? You know, so for me, printing it out and putting it into a book binder really helps to streamline the process, and it helps to make it go a lot faster. So this is something I would suggest for you all. Do that method. Print out things, put it in here. When you write your notes, put it in here. When you have something that you're thinking about, stick it in there. Now, the other reason that you use this book binder is because you can carry it. It's very portable. You can take it anywhere with you. And you'll find that as you go along with this writing your draft process, you'll be able to sneak little minutes throughout the day during things that you probably hadn't really thought about before. Like maybe you're at the doctor's office. You have your book binder there with you. You can just sneak a few minutes and jot some notes down in there. You'll find that you have a lot more time than you realize once you keep this with you and you keep it on the forefront of your mind. So even sneaking those 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 30 seconds here, 2 minutes there, that adds up. And throughout the day, you'll find that, wow, I thought I didn't have any time, but I've already put in like 29 minutes on this book so far. So I really like this method. I suggest you guys use it if it fits the way you work. Now, another method is the outline method. And this is something I use when I have a more extensive project. So when you're outlining, the first step is just to get those main ideas out of your head and down onto paper. So first thing, let's say I'm writing a book about, let's say I'm writing a book about travel. Okay, so I'm writing a book about travel and how to travel inexpensively or something. So how to travel on a dime. So let's say I'm writing a book about how to travel on a dime. So one thing that I want them to think about is their points, using points on their credit card. And maybe another thing I want them to think about is choosing exotic locations where the US dollar is stronger than that location's dollar so that you maximize your money. And maybe another big thing I want them to think about is using coupons or finding some deals through following travel sites or such. So the point is that you can get these main ideas out of your head down. You're not really worried about all the little small details yet. Just get the main ideas down, right? So I like to brainstorm at least 10 main ideas on whatever topic it is. This is for nonfiction. For a fiction, you can do the same thing. So maybe you want to start out with your characters. Maybe you have one protagonist that you're thinking of, and you can really get some big things down on that character. So who are they? What do they like? What are their motivations? Do they have any small idiosyncrasies for your fiction, your protagonist, your main character? What do they even look like? You know, what's the description of that character? So for fiction novelists, those who are writing fiction books on here, you want to be as intimately connected to your characters as possible. So you want to know a lot of details about who your characters are. What do they think about? What are their motivations in life? What are their fears? What are their challenges? Because your job as a novelist is to take your characters through some growth right, throughout the book. So your characters need to have a lot of depth to them. So in this outline phase, if you're writing a fiction book, think about your characters. Think about any main plots that you have, some big things. Oh, this happens, put that big idea down. You don't have to worry about all the details of how it happens or who says what and who does what exactly. But the big idea, you can get that down. All right. So that's the first stage for the outline method. The second stage is after you have those main ideas, and for the nonfiction people, I really suggest that you brainstorm around 10, main ideas. So after you have those main ideas down, then you want to come in and put some important points. So let's go back to my example about credit cards, travel, for example. So let's say the main idea of using your credit card as a way to build up points. So let's say I think an important point on there is to find a credit card that gives you the maximum number of free miles or such, and then find a credit card that doesn't take away your miles. It rolls over. So you can put your important points underneath the big main idea. I always say try to get 4 important points underneath each big main idea. So you're going to do that for each main idea. So main idea 1, 2, 3, all the way through to number 10. And then you're going to come through and do your important points for those main ideas. So again, notice we're not really worried about the exact words. We're not really worried about even order. That's not important. Right now, it's just getting it out and down, right? Okay. So after that, you have done your main ideas. You've done the important points. Then you're going to go in and flush out. Now you can start to write some sentences. They don't have to be grammatically correct sentences, but you're going to start to write some sentences here. And so under each important point, then you're going to go in and maybe write 10 sentences explaining what you mean about that point. Maybe for the second point, you do 2 paragraphs, right? So and so on. You continue that through all of your important points and then all of your main ideas. So you can see how you're doing it in stages. You're adding things in stages to this book. And in the process of doing it in stages, it's getting deeper, it's getting more detail, more ideas are getting flushed out, and you're moving on into the end where you actually have finished your first draft. All right. So after you have done these, this detailed outline where you have your main ideas, then you have your important points, and then you have your sentences, what you do from that point is now you go back and you can begin to reorganize and flush out. So let's say you say, okay, well, main idea number 3 is the starting point. This is where I need people to really begin. Then you go ahead and that's your chapter 1. Main idea number 4, maybe that should come after the number 3. And so that's chapter 2. So after you get all of these main ideas down, then you're going to come in and organize, and those main ideas will become your chapters. So you may decide at the end that main idea number 5 really is not important at all. So you may decide to take that out, or you may decide that 7 and 8 kind of go together. So I'll combine those, and you can combine them. So the thing is, at the beginning, you get it out of your head, get those main ideas down, and then get the important things you need for people to know about that main idea down. And then you're going to add the detailed sentences and paragraphs after that. After you get all of those main ideas down, then you're going to go in and begin to organize and flush it out. Okay, so that is primarily for a nonfiction author. Now, I don't have a slide for a fiction author, but I do want to mention when you're talking about fiction. So remember we mentioned about your characters and knowing your characters very deeply. That's one thing that you need to do for your book. You just you have to know who your characters are, and at a very deep level. Do they even walk a certain way? Like, do they have a favorite song they like to listen to, like what do they look like. All of those things are important because they help to build in rapport between your character and your reader. The other thing for your fiction novels is that the setting is important. If you put this book in Southern California, that's going to be different than setting your book in Alberta, Canada, right? So the setting is also very important. So any details that you can put about the setting at this point are wonderful. Get those things out and down so that you can add those things possibly later on. Now, another thing about the fiction books is the plots. So if you have some things that are coming up where you have big ideas that, oh, this is going to happen, and then bam, this is going to happen, write those big ideas down so that you can maybe reorganize and add them in later. Remember, every chapter for a fiction novel, you need to have some type of tension, something that something that happens right in that chapter. So it doesn't have to be the big plot, but it's some type of mini catastrophe that happens within every chapter. So think about some of those mini catastrophes that you want to include in your book. You don't have to have them all in order, but just think about them when you're starting to write the book. All right. So now let me say this as well, because this outline method really works for me. I'm a sort of detail-oriented type of person. But there are some times where you just get in the flow, right? So you just sit down and then it just starts coming to you. You get this moment of inspiration. So I'm not saying stop that moment of inspiration and then say, oh, she said don't write down any sentences yet. I'm only on main idea. If that moment of inspiration hits you, then type away or write away, get it out of your head because that's coming to you. Now, sometimes you're going to hit a moment of writer's block and you're like, man, I don't know what to do. Nothing's coming to me at this point. Then that's when I say go back to this outline type of method because it really helps you to think about things in a logical way. Or maybe skip and start to do some research. If you know that you have a character that is a botanist and you don't know too much about botany, then maybe start to do some research about botany. Just read around. If you're writing a book on inspiration and maybe you're coming up at a writer's block moment, that's kind of funny, but you're writing about inspiration, but you have some writer's block, then maybe talk to a friend, do something in that interim that can help you through that time. All right, so let's keep going because I see some questions coming in. And yes, you guys can go ahead and keep typing your questions on the side and I will get to those as we go along. Okay, now this is another method that people use. So what I want you to know is that in this webinar, I'm showing you different methods. You can use what works best for your personality. So find what fits you and then go with that. Now, you guys see this, right? It's just a big piece of butcher paper on the wall. This one, I think someone was using this for maybe a nonprofit strategy session or such, but the same idea is for a book. If you have a blank wall in your house, you can just put a huge piece of butcher paper on the wall. And then those main ideas that we talked about, or those characters, you can write those things up on this huge piece of paper, and it makes it really visual for you. Then you can kind of draw lines to say, this connects to this. You can do all kind of stuff when it's this big in your house. So if you have that type of space, and you're a visual type of person, maybe even mobile, then, this may be a method that really works for you. So get some paper. You can get this from any arts and crafts store. Poster boards also work, even a dry erase board, whatever it is, but you can put this up and it can help you to move along. Now, one thing I didn't mention that I should mention is that writing is somewhat of a lonely process, right? Like if you're in a room full of people and they're all trying to talk to you, you can't write. You're not going to be able to think. You can't get it down. So while you're in this process of finishing your draft, you may need to separate yourself, and you're going to have to realize that like being a writer means you hammering out ideas, and you have to be able to think for that to happen. So if that's hammering out at your computer, or whether that's hammering out some big ideas on your butcher paper like this screen, whatever it is, that's getting this stuff out. After you get it onto this butcher paper, then you can go back and type in your words, type in the sentences into your computer. But this is another way for you to get it out of your head. All right. Now, some people say, I don't like typing. Well, you can use a dictation software. I have one of the ladies in our group program. She just updated me yesterday. So she just updated me yesterday. She wrote her entire draft in longhand. In her notebook, she used the binder method. So she wrote her entire draft in longhand, and then she used her phone. You know how you can do text, you can voice your text. So she used her phone to read out her draft and emailed that to herself. And then she is editing that. So if you don't like typing, you don't have to type. You can use a dictation software to get the draft out. You can voice your book. And I tell people this who especially have a lot of long commutes. If you're in your car for an hour a day, use that time to write your book. Use your phone. You can speak into your phone, and that will email to yourself, and then you can use that for your book. So you don't have to be pecking away A, C, J, you can speak it if that was what works for you. All right. Now, the other thing is that maybe you have a wonderful idea for a book, but you are not the best writer, right? You have a wonderful idea, but you're not the best writer. Or maybe you don't have time at all. You're just not really concerned about the actual writing of the book. You just want to get this thing done. You can hire a ghostwriter. What this means is that this is someone who will take your ideas and they will do all the work of getting it into a coherent way for readers to benefit from, and they will write the book. So when you reach out to a ghostwriter, they're going to usually have a series of interviews with you. So they'll sit you down, they'll talk to you about your main idea, your motivations, maybe some idiosyncrasies about you as an author yourself, because those things will then come into the book and the language, the tone of the final project. So people do this all the time. Think about all those celebrities that put out these books and you're like, I know they didn't write those books. They didn't. They hired a ghostwriter to write it with them. Maybe they either co-authored it with them, or the ghostwriter may have written the entire book themselves, based on what the author said, what they voiced. So that is an option for you. You don't have to do it. You can always hire a ghostwriter to work with you. So the main thing is that with all the things that I've shared with you so far, you need to implement it. You need to do what you need to do in order for it to get done. So perhaps you need to set a writing schedule. If you write 3,000 words a day, then in 10 days, you have 30,000 words. That's enough for a short story. And that's definitely enough for, about a quarter of a book or so, right? So maybe that works for you, doing it by number of words a day. Maybe you need to do an hour a day, or 2 hours in the morning, or maybe you can write an hour after the kids go to sleep. Or maybe you say, okay, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to write from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., So if that works for you, then go ahead and do that. Now, the thing is that while you're doing this writing, while you're finishing your draft, you're going to have to sacrifice some other things. So that may mean ignoring the television while you're finishing this draft. That may mean not logging into Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or all of those social media sites that take so much of our time away. You may need to ditch that. And if you go back to what I spoke about, mindset and claiming the fact that you are an author and you are getting this book done, that means that this book is important to you. So it's a priority. And you have to set it as a priority for yourself and also communicate that to the world, that I'm working on a book right now. Finishing your book in 3 weeks or 1 month is not, going to kill you, right? So if this is important to you, taking this 1 month out and writing it, getting it done is something that's going to be a huge benefit for you. So ignore the television, ditch social media, maybe Stop hanging out with your girlfriends for the monthly coffees this month because you're writing this book. You're getting it done. So whatever schedule you need to do for yourself, go ahead and do that. 3,000 words, hour a day, whatever it is, just find something that works for you so that you can get the thing done, right? Now, there are some tools that you can use. I've already mentioned your phone can be a dictation software. There are other dictation software programs that you can purchase online. If you Google free dictation software, there are some programs that you can use for free as well. Now, the other thing I like to use sometime is the read aloud function in Microsoft Word. I'll write some draft. I just did this yesterday. I had an article that was due to a publication. So I wrote out my draft. I wrote my most of everything that I wanted to say. I got it out onto paper. And then I had the Microsoft Word. If you go in and just Google it, you can set your Microsoft Word to read the document aloud to you. So I had the Microsoft Word read it aloud to me so that I could catch any mistakes. I can catch grammatical things. I can catch words that I use frequently, like so. I know that's a word that I use too often. So see, but I can catch those types of things in Microsoft Word. So use that function, read aloud. Okay, write or die. I'll show you this in a second, but there are some other software programs that you can use to help you keep on track. You can join an accountability group. There are plenty of writing groups, both in your town. If you Google writing groups, forums, meetups, there are all kinds of groups that you can meet with, and those people can also be your accountability partners to help you stay on track with them with this. Of course, people who join my programs, I help them stay on track. That's just my job. Now, the other thing is that you can read and model your book after other great books. So if you are writing a book like Think and Grow Rich, you can use that book as a model. How many chapters are in it? Like, what are the big ideas that he speaks about? Not that you're copying the book, but you're using it as a model for your book. So read other great books and then model your book after them. And that way you don't have to start from scratch. Now, some software that people use. I personally don't use this software, but other people do, and they find it works well for them. So Scrivener is one type of software. You guys can just look this up. It's Scrivener for those who are on their phone and maybe can't see the slides. But Scrivener is a program that allows you to break your big book project down into smaller chunks. So you can say, okay, this week I'm going to work on this chapter or this main idea. You can break all of that down and it'll help you keep it on track. So it's sort of like a book binder, but in electronic format. But there are also a lot of other functionalities to it as well. So if you like those types of things, those programs that keep you on track, go ahead and get that. As you can see, I think they have a free trial and it's $40 if you want to buy it. So try it, can't hurt. Try it and see how it works for you. Another program is Write or Die. This one is free. It is so crazy, but it's intended to really keep you on track. So you can set a time. So let's say you want to write 1 hour. You set your time. If you stop writing, it can start to send you an alarm. It'll start playing this really weird music. And then you can even set it at a mode where if you pause for too long or if you don't reach your goal, like the words will start erasing themselves from the screen. So the point is making you get words down out of your head. And again, what I mentioned earlier about writing your first draft is that it's going to be crap, right? So sometimes you need a system that just forces you to just get it out. Just get the words out of your head. Get them down onto paper. You may not use but 2 out of those 100 that you wrote, but get them down onto paper. So this is another free program that you guys can use. It's called Write or Die. You can Google it and it'll come up and you can get that. That one's free. So the point is that when you are writing this book, just like this picture, I love these types of pictures, but when you start the process, the ripples will go out. when you start putting those words down to paper, you'll begin to receive the inspiration. The writer blocks will also go away. You'll find that things continue to come to you. You may even find that something that you had at your disposal that you didn't even realize was useful for your book, all of a sudden is apparent to you. It's going to come. You just need to start and it will follow. All right, so I always say don't panic because it is easier than you think. So I want to share with you all. Okay, so go ahead and type in additional questions on the right, and I will answer all of your questions. But I want to share with you all a little bit about my system for those who are interested in that. So our self-published system is something that authors like Alexandria Osborne, who's launching her book in the next couple of weeks. She's worked on this memoir, The Black Mzungu, for this past several months or so. And now we're at the phase where we're actually getting her out to the world. So authors like this, you know, a first-time author, you don't really know where to go. If you follow these types of systems, they will get you to where you need to get in a very easy and stress-free manner. So our system is for folks who want to easily finish their drafts, reach their readers, possibly generate multiple streams of income, and leave a legacy with your book. All right? So we remove the guesswork so that you can save time, money, and effort. So this can be your book, right? I want you to finish your book. Finish it. Now, I see some questions coming in. Go ahead and type any questions that you have. I am going to answer all of them. So our system teaches you how to step-by-step write a clear and publishing plan, including the budget and timeline, how to do all of the inner work that you need to do in order to succeed at publishing, how to create a dynamic book from draft to print, also how to devise a solid marketing plan, because if you don't have a marketing plan, it's not going to sell. It will sit on your computer or in Kindle or in your garage and not sell. And then how to use your book material to generate multiple streams of income, maybe from speaking engagements or workshops or presentations. How to use the same material that you put into this book into those multiple streams of income. And I'll tell you guys as well, like while you're starting to work on your first drafts, for those people who know that you're building this book to be an income generator for you, thinking about ways that you're going to use your book material after the book is complete, thinking about those things before you write the draft will save you a lot of time and effort. So for example, if you're going to be writing your draft, you're going to write your book to launch a career in coaching, for example, and maybe you know that you like to do maybe a 6-week course or so. If you organize the book in a way that every week can just pull maybe chapters 1 and 2 is for week 1, maybe chapters 3 and 4 is for week 2, and you can follow your book along with your courses, of course, that's going to make your organization of your course a lot easier, right? So thinking about what you're going to do with your book after the book is complete at the phase of writing the book draft is very, very useful for you. And you'll find that it just saves you a lot of time. Look, I'm a mom with 3 kids, so I have to be able to find ways that I can carve time out, with my system. And also, I don't want to redo things. So if I'm doing it once, I want to be able to make sure it's going to work for me for the long haul. So thinking about that is going to help you as well. So I'm also going to offer this to you guys. I offered this to the last webinar group that I had. But if you guys are serious and you want some help with thinking about strategy for your book, I'm going to I only have time for 5 now, but if you go to enlivenyoursoul.com and you'll see schedule a session, you can click on that, and the first 5 people that sign up, I will give you all a free 45-minute session where I'll go over your book. I have a lot of questions that I ask all of our authors, and that really helps you to get in the zone of writing your book, and it also gives you some tips on the next steps that you should take for your book. So go to enlivenyoursoul.com and we will give those sessions to the first 5 people. My group program is going to be starting in the next couple of weeks. So if you have questions about that, you could type those in as well. I'll give you that information. And of course, my private clients are always around as well. So, okay. So now let's get to your questions that you all have. So I, of course, have blocked this time off for you. And I always say this because no question is a dumb question. Any question that you have about either your book draft, maybe your title, maybe your subject, whatever questions you have, go ahead and type those in, and then I will be able to answer them here. Okay, so let's see. Shumesa. Okay, so the replay of this webinar will come to you, I'm guessing within the next couple of hours or so. So you'll get a link where you can watch the slides all over again. You can replay, you can share it. Any of those things will be in the link. So you'll be able to see that as well. Okay. Okay, so Erica is saying, what if I don't even know my main ideas? Okay. Well, if you're writing a book and you don't know your main ideas at all, then one, I have to ask, like, how did you pick that topic? Like, did you pick this topic just because it's something that you think is interesting? Like, why did you write that book why are you writing this book on a subject that you know nothing about? Now, that's the first question that I would have for you. But I also realize that books can be an educational process, meaning that if you have a topic and you don't know everything about that topic, but it's something you want to explore and you want to add a spin on, put your personal touch to, then you need to do your research. So you need to read other books on this subject, a lot of other books on that subject, and then you can devise what's important, what's not important, what you think needs to be added, and then your book that you're adding on that subject needs to either fill a gap, something that all the other books didn't address, or it needs to have a unique spin on it. So I guess you don't have to have your main ideas all in the beginning if that is the route that you're taking. But the other the other question I have for you is, why did you choose that subject? Pick something that is that you already know about. Write on that, first. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. I don't know if I can't see them or if there are just no more questions here. But if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type those in, and I will answer all of your questions. Okay. So Jillian is asking about when are we going to edit? Okay, so I mentioned that your first draft is just usually not the best draft, right? There's not the final copy. Every single author, from Stephen King and all of these prominent authors, they all have editors. Every single one of them has someone that looks at their book and helps them to craft it in a way that it achieves the goals that it needs to achieve. It doesn't mean that you're a bad writer, that you have an editor. Every single person that writes a great book, and any book that is traditionally published, will have an editor. So after you finish your first draft, then you're going to go through a self-editing process. That means maybe you let it sit for a day, maybe 2 days, depending upon your time frame. You let your draft sit so that you can kind of clear your brain for a little bit, and then you come back to the draft and you go back and look at areas that you may have missed, some things that may need to be reworked. Maybe there's some gaps that need to be filled. You come back to it, and then you do your self-edit. After you get it to a place where you think that you can't do anymore, and at some point you're just going to have to stop, because for people like me who are a perfectionist, there's always going to be something else that you can add, right? So at some point you just have to stop and then pass it over to an editor. And the editor will either pick it up and do a copy edit, which means they'll go through and look at line by line things that need to be added. Or you may just get a proofreader someone to look at the basic grammar and spelling types of things. So the editing is going to come after your draft, and an edit is necessary. Okay, so I hope that answered your question. If you have another one, go ahead and type that in. But Shemesa says, I have topics in mind and some basic ideas and the rough idea of my poems ready with me, but I am like stuck at the same place, not moving forward. Maybe I can not invest too much money in getting my book published. Um, so let me read this again. I have topics in mind and some basic ideas and the rough drafts of my poems ready, but I am stuck at the same place. So I guess my first question would be, what is that place? Is the place where you haven't written all the poems out? Is it where you haven't gotten the details down from your basic ideas? So I guess I would need to know like what that same place is. Like, where are you stuck exactly? Where are you stuck? Every writer gets stuck. I won't say every writer, but I'll say the majority. 9 out of 10 writers get stuck at some place. So when you're stuck, you have to identify, one, why are you stuck? Is it because you have a lack of knowledge in one particular area? If that's so, then go do some research, right? Are you stuck because you're coming up with some inner things, like maybe some inner fears are bringing doubts to your mind? If that's something that's causing you to pause, then you need to work through those types of things. Are you stuck because you're just really afraid that if you get the book out, people are going to then read your work and they're going to have something to say to you, So the first thing I think is to identify why are you stuck, and then you can move forward. Now, writer's block comes up a lot of times. People say, I have writer's block. I don't know how to really get through that. Writer's block sometimes comes up for me, and what I usually like to do is go back to my outline, or I like to do something that's called a brain dump. So with the brain dump, that means just get whatever, just like sit down, get a piece of paper, or open up a clean document on Microsoft Word and close down all the other windows. Like, don't have Facebook up and don't have everything up on your screen. Close everything down and just have a Microsoft Word with that one blank screen. And then I just do a brain dump. Like, whatever comes to my mind, it doesn't have to be related to the book or not. I'll just dump it out. Like, just type it all out. And I find that once I get everything kind of out of my brain, then I'm re-inspired to go back to my book topic. And sometimes it'll just naturally kind of flow to my topic that I actually want to write on at this time anyway. So that is something that you guys can do as well. Just do a brain dump. Just get it out of your head and get it down. All right, so Shemesa says, yes, they are already written, a collection of poems since my childhood to this day. So if you already have the poems, then you just need to get an editor at this point. So you have your poems, get an editor and someone who is knowledgeable with poetry editing. Now, people sometimes say, poetry, do you have to edit poetry? I believe that you do have to edit poetry. It doesn't mean that it's all going to change, but there are sometimes things that an editor may catch in your poem that you maybe didn't. So having someone, another pair of eyes, go over it is always a great idea. So if you already have your poems written, maybe select a poetry editor to go over it, and then you're just going to compile it and go through the publishing steps from there. So if it's something you really want to do, right, get an editor and move from there. You don't have to be stuck at that point. Now, I will say with poetry, and I tell some people this a lot, but poetry is a difficult genre to sell. That's because there's a lot of it, right? It's saturated. And because people are not often like typing in for poetry, like typing into Google, they're not searching for it all the time. So you'll need to do some work to kind of build up your fan base, Shemesa, around your poetry, so that when you release it and you've done your marketing plan, you're going to be able to sell it, right? So of course it depends on what your goals are. A lot of people come to me, especially with these memoirs. A lot of people are writing these memoirs and they're getting their creative work out, not so much to sell all the time, but to leave a legacy for their children. You know, if you think about it, like for your great great grandfather, like wouldn't it have been really cool to know who your great great grandfather was? And if he had written a book about himself, you would be able to read it. So now here you are now. You know, you can write a book about yourself. It doesn't have to be a #1 bestseller, but something that you compile about your life, your way of thinking, your fears, your doubts, your challenges, your obstacles, things that you even overcome, your triumphs, you know, your successes, everything about your life that you want to provide for your future generations. You write that stuff down, you publish it into a book so that your family can have it. So there are a lot of reasons why people, I believe, should publish. So for your poetry, you know, I'm mentioning about selling. So if that's something that's important to you, then yes, get a strong marketing plan together and get that stuff done. Get an editor to go over it and move, you know, get it out into the world. But if your poetry is not so much for selling, and you just want to compile it and it's a creative process for you, then you don't have to do as much of the marketing side of it and just, you know, compile it and get it done. So all right, I'm not seeing any other questions that come in. So if you guys can always go to my website if you're interested in you're serious, right? Like you're serious and you really want to get your book done within the next 6 months to a year. I will offer you one of my free strategy sessions to the first 5 people that go ahead and sign up for that. You can also email me at zarina@nia.net. I'm on Twitter at Enliven Your Soul. Facebook, my Facebook page is facebook.com/nia.net. And for information on the group program, some of it is old on the website, but you can still see kind of what we go into. You can visit that enlivenyoursoul.com/publish now. All right, so I'm always like to give you guys one last moment for questions just to make sure I'm not clicking off before. So if you all have any last questions, type those in. So I see that there are still people on the line. I would like for you, those who don't have questions, I just need to hear from you. What was one thing that you found useful about today's webinar? So what is one thing that you found useful about today's webinar? So type that in for me so I know what is, you know, good about the webinar and what possibly I need to change or so. So type that in for me. What's one thing that you found useful about today's webinar? It's always so funny doing these webinars. You always feel like not alone, but you just feel weird sometimes. Okay, so Shemesa says, thank you for the suggestions. I appreciate that. You are most welcome. Hopefully you got some great information out of it. Oh, the other thing is I am going to do another free webinar next week. And I think that that is probably going to be on, I'm not sure yet, actually, maybe editing or on like selecting your print on demand printer. So I'm not sure yet, but I know I'll do another free webinar next week. So I will send you all that information, and you can also like the page, facebook.com/nia.net, and you'll be able to see the information on there as well. Okay, so signing. Okay, well, Shahida says, I love the clarity and the experience you bring with the methods of brainstorming. Wonderful. I'm glad you got that. Okay, Bina says, thank you. I need to run. We'll follow up with any questions. Wonderful. Looking forward to you following up. Okay, great. All right. Wonderful, you guys. I'm really thankful that you guys are getting some information out of it, and I like to be useful. So, alhamdulillah. Praise God. I'm glad about that. Okay, so you guys, I always end with saying the world is waiting for your message, so get your book done. This is Zarina El-Amin Naeem, the self-publishing strategist from Detroit, Michigan. Looking forward to talking to you all next week. See you all online. Have a great day.